Well, I never expected to make reviews on this channel, but here I am. Hello everyone, it's Sakura, and today I wanna do something quite different. I always enjoyed reviews of all kinds of media. Not only did they help me find some of my favorite shows of all time, but I really like to hear different people's thoughts about these things, because they might have noticed something in a story that I did not. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I think I have to mention that I realized while typing the script, this is not just a review, there is also gonna be a whole bunch of me just fangirling because I love Tokyo Revengers. I watched the anime as far as it came out already, and I read all of the manga that is revealed at the moment. And I just want to say that this review will be spoiler free. I will summarize the very first episode to give you an overview what the story is about. Also, I'm gonna show some manga panels, but they will all be out of context and completely spoiler free. Don't worry, you might just see what haircut another character will have in the future. That's it. Sounds good? Sounds good. Let's get started. Our story begins with Takemichi Hanagaki, who is a 27-year-old dude that lives in a dirty little apartment all by himself. He learns in the very first scene through the news that Hinata Tachibana, a girl that he used to date, and her younger brother Naoto died in a conflict, including the so-called Tokyo Manji gang. Now Takemichi kinda gets into a sad mood and realizes how little he reached in his life so far, and that he kinda still loved Hinata, but will never see her again.
Huh?
And suddenly, he is pushed in front of a train. But since he has the power of God and anime on his side, he doesn't end up dead, but instead 12 years in the past, blonde delinquent hair, nostalgic friend group and all. He realizes that he can time jump now and change the past by different actions. In fact, one of the first things he did was telling Naoto that he will die on that one specific date in the future and asks him to protect Hinata. After that promise, he returns to his original time, already learning that things have changed. Naoto is still alive, but couldn't save his sister. But he saved Takemichi from dying by pulling him from the train tracks in the last moment. Also turns out that the time travel trigger is simply touching Naoto's hand, which yes, suddenly makes a lot more sense around chapter 200 in the manga. Now what I just summarized are the basics of the first episode. After that, things basically go like this. Takemichi and Naoto make plans about what has to change in the past so Hina survives. Takemichi goes back in time. An arc happens about the thing that he has to change. He succeeds, more or less. He returns to the present, things are still not fine, repeat. And surprisingly enough, I don't grow tired of this. For me, more often than not, it seems like a cheap way out of a complicated situation. But the thing I like about Tokyo Revengers is that the arcs between the time jumps are rather long. So far, we got like 6 or 7 jumps, and the changes in the different presents are also big enough to not make them boring. But you know what genre I also normally don't like? Gangs. The only things to fix this for me are interesting characters. That's why JoJo Part 5 surprised me that much, because I will protect these boys with my life. And oh boy, does Tokyo Revengers deliver. Yeah, Takemichi can be a bit boring since he starts as this pretty typical protagonist, but the other characters are just fantastic. Hinata, who's just an incredibly kind and loyal person, who's also surprisingly strong mentally and keep her head up. Akun and the rest of Takemichi's friends have all their distinct personalities and bounce off perfectly from each other. There's of course also the gang, Mitsuya, who looks like he wants to join the Black Parade, but is actually a very positive voice in the gang. Baji, who is just the biggest MVP, his boy Toichifuyu, who should just kiss him already instead of reading romance manga, come on Shifuyu. There's Kisaki, who you just love to hate, and of course, the two best things that happened in this show, in my opinion at least. Mikey and Draken, president and vice president of the gang. Mikey is unironically a love child between L from Death Note and Albedo from Genshin Impact. And these are my faves in their franchises, so of course I love Mikey. As the leader, you know that guy is bad news, even when he's just so small and can come off as a bit childish and immature sometimes. If Mikey is a fire that brings more heat into the story, Draken is more like ice that neutralizes him a bit. He's Mikey's best friend and has a kind of bleak but surprisingly entertaining backstory. He's a bit like a tank throughout the story and more mature than the others in the gang, sometimes being a sort of guide for Takemichi in the future and the final time jump. Also, he carries Mikey around when he falls asleep. Which, yes, is a very important point that I had to mention, because I love these two dogs. The anime is okay. I like the colors, and I'm mostly okay with how the characters are drawn. Silly scenes get a bit overdrawn, like in the manga, which I always appreciate. The soundtrack is fine, the main theme simply slaps, even when it starts a bit like Photograph by Nickelback. The OP is both visually and sound-wise amazing. It actually hides a lot of spoilers in plain sight, which is also something I personally love, especially because you don't recognize them at first watch. Both endings are fine as they are. A bit too boring, so I don't listen to them on the daily, but they are good enough that I don't skip them after each episode. Now about the manga. It is simply put god tier. The art style is very dynamic, and Ken Bakui wasn't scared of drawing some very extreme scenes full of motion and perspective. Yes, I talk about a few panels that look like Mikey is flying. Compared to his earlier works, his style clearly developed a lot, and in a good way in my opinion. A thing also very special to this manga are, as mentioned before, the different versions of the present. You have a lot of characters in the manga, but each one has such unique features, you even recognize them 12 years later and with different hairstyles. Most main characters can easily be distinguished, which is normally something I struggle with bigger casts. Looking at you, Tokyo Ghoul. And about the real-life adaptation, nice work with the manji. Speaking of which, the gang is called Tokyo Manji Gang. This is a manji, and yes, it looks a lot like a swastika. Now, as you probably know, swastikas are heavily associated with the Third Reich, which is honestly really unfortunate, since the manji has really nothing to do with all this. But because of these similarities, the manji has been heavily censored in the English versions of the anime, and probably in the German one as well. I haven't seen everything of the German dub yet. I mean...
Ken Ryuguchi. Auch Draken genannt.
Draken. Anyway, because of that censor, I clearly suggest reading the manga. Because once the censor people are at work, they won't stop. Many of the publishing services removed things like the fighting scenes because they are too complicated to censor, or even bigger chunks of a background story that are very important to the characterizations. So yeah, this is a clear point for the manga over the anime. Dub-wise, I have to say that the English one is fine, so no problem in looking that up. Another thing I think is strange about the anime is the amount of repeating. Each manga chapter starts with 1 or 2 pages reflecting back on the chapter beforehand. And it seems like the anime adapted this with very frequent flashbacks of scenes that happened like 1 minute ago. And especially in the Bloody Halloween arc, this is more distracting than anything else. At the moment, the manga is at the beginning of its final arc with 218 chapters. In my opinion, this is a good time to jump up and read it all in one swoop in a few days. Each page has only a handful of speech bubbles, so it's really a quick read. Just please prepare some tissues, because when character deaths happen, they hit hard. And that's it for the review, and I hoped you liked my rambling about my newest hyperfixation. About reviews in general, this was my first review, and I will probably don't do another one quite soon. Maybe I'm gonna do another review of Tokyo Revengers when the manga is done, but other than that I don't think so. If you wanna look up my channel, I make a lot of fan art related content, and I also do some readings of my own fanfictions. And most of it is related to shipping, so if this is not your cup of tea, that's totally fine. I don't force you to subscribe, only if you like this kind of content. If you liked the video, feel free to like it, and maybe comment down below what you think of Tokyo Revengers, and also sharing would be very much appreciated. I did this audio twice, because the first time it didn't work quite out, it was complicated. Every bit of sharing and caring would be nice. Now that is out of the way, just a few more things. Please don't join any random gangs. Stay away from trucks and trains, and have a beautiful day. Bye.